Hey, my name's ShawNshawN and I sell art on ShawNshawN.co and art on specials on eBay. Today we're going to review Rambo Last Blood. So this is a film with the director Adrian Grunberg. Sylvester Stallone is Rambo again. Paz Vegas plays Carmen Delgado, Yvette Monreal plays Gabrielle. Adrian Barraza plays Maria Beltran. And Shayla Shaw plays Alejandra. So the story it centers around Gabrielle, and she's a young Mexican-American girl. Her parents immigrated from Mexico to the States for a better life, and then the father kind of split and disappeared when she was young. And it turns out later that her mother died, and then that's when he kind of left, you know. And so she was left with kind of a grandma, and the grandma becomes a house cleaner for Rambo, and so they kind of gel, and he becomes kind of one of her caretakers, is kind of the adopted uncle. And she's at high school, and you know, she calls his friend who moves back to Mexico, and her friend says, "Hey, I know where your dad is." And she's like, "Oh, I want to see my dad, I want to see your dad." Rambo tells her no. Her guardian says it's dangerous, but you know, she's a kid, so she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go see her anyway." And so she goes visit her friends in Mexico. They go to see the dad, and the dad just tells her, "Hey, I didn't want you, that's why I left." And so it totally breaks this girl's heart. You know, she was expecting maybe some kind of reunion or something, like he would have regretted his decision. He doesn't regret it at all. So she's completely heartbroken. Her friend's like, "Hey, let's go to the bar, forget this, we're gonna have some parties." And she goes to this bar, you know, her friends hanging out with her other friends, and then this guy's talking to her, she's trying to get rid of him. And then he doses her a drink and she passes out, right? And then she wakes up and she's been sold into this kind of prostitution ring. And Rambo gets worried, and he's like, "Well, she's been gone for a while, you know, so let's go." He goes all the way down to Mexico. First he goes to the dad. He expects something went wrong with the dad. The dad doesn't know anything. And he's like, "If anything happens to you, I'm gonna get you." And then he goes to the friend, and the friend says, "Hey, we were at this bar, I don't know what happened. She went with this guy, I don't know why." You know, totally covering her ass. He's like, "You better show me this guy." She's like, "I live here, I can't do that." And he's like, "Just point her out, that's all you need to do." So I go to the bar, they're kind of hanging around this column, and he's like, "It's this guy over here, you know, right in that corner." And she's like, "All right, now get the hell out of here," right? So he goes out, he follows this guy, he waits for the guy, and then the guy leaves. And then there's this woman spying Rambo at the same time, and you're thinking, oh, she's gonna rat him out, right? And it's like, oh shit. And so he follows all the way back to this house, and these ringleaders of the gang have kind of this penthouse over the city, and they're doing drugs up there and all kind of stuff. But you don't see the girls, right? So Rambo kind of works his way up to the top, and then he's surrounded by this gang, and he's like, "Here's my knife and gun, whatever. I just want to know where the girl is." He's like, "What are you doing here, you stupid old man?" And they freaking beat the hell out of him. And at the end, they just mark him with his own knife and said, like, "Get the hell out of here. You know, we don't want to see you again. Take this as a lesson. You know, you come back again, we're going to mark up the girl now because you freaking came down here." So now he's really pissed off, right? But he's all broken. The girl that was following him turns out to be this reporter. I think it's Alejandra. I'm not sure what the name's, but... Or no, it's Paz. It's Carmen. Is this reporter, and it turns out Carmen's sister had disappeared in the same gang, and she's trying to expose the gang by reporting it in the local news, but it's very dangerous. And the doctor that comes sees Rambo is like, "You're crazy, what are you doing with this guy?" And she patches him up, and then he's kind of put back together, and he's like, "Man, we got to get these guys." She's like, "No, man, it's crazy, they'll kill us, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "No, just give me some information, I'll figure it out." So he goes back and he finds out where the actual prostitution, where they're having the girls. So he's hiding out, and he's like, "Hey, I want a young girl. Do you have any young girls?" And they're like, "All right, I'll let you in." And they don't recognize him right away because he's kind of covered up as a different door guy, right? So he immediately starts fucking these guys up. He's using a hammer to kill these guys, so it's really brutal. Because he obviously had his weapon stolen, right? Which makes sense. You wouldn't be able to find a gun right off the spot, especially with no connections in Mexico. So that makes sense. You'd have to use some brutal weapon. So he goes through, all the girls are totally scared to leave, so he doesn't really rescue anyone. He finds his adopted daughter, takes her back to his truck, throws her in her truck, and they drive back to the U.S., right? So they have to kind of cut through the border, drive through the border fence, which is barbed wire at this point in the desert. And he's almost the way home to the ranch, and then she's kind of drugged. And she's like, "No, stay awake, we're gonna patch you up." And then she passes out, right? They OD'd her with some shit. And they've been drugging her, which is very common with prostitutes. They break them in they capture them, and then they just drug them over and over and over, and then they rape them repeatedly. And eventually, once they're kind of broken in, then they take them to the States or wherever they're going to ship them. And so she's in the breaking edge stage where they're just like raping her every day and then drugging her. And so, you know, because they've been drugging her so much, they just fucked her all up in like 3 or 4 days, which is kind of unbelievable, but they're kind of, you know, making it a little bit more dramatic than probably would be, but she would be fucked up, you know. So, she gets back, she passes out, and it turns out she just died. She OD'd on whatever crap they gave her. So she ODs, and then Rambo's like, that's it, man. I want to finish these guys. It's totally not acceptable, that they did this to her. That was the only thing he knew that was pure, which is true for Rambo. He's had kind of a brutal life, as we know from the previous films. So, this story of revenge is really strong. I think that's well knit. So he goes back, he kind of kills off the gang that he finds, and then leaves a picture of his daughter so they know to come and get him, right? So he can finish off even more guys. So Rambo booby traps his whole farm where he lives. He already has his tunnel system built out, in case someone comes for him. So he's like suffering PTSD, but obviously he goes, since he's a warrior, he knows how to build traps. So he builds all kind of, Rambo style traps, similar to almost First Blood, the very first Rambo. And, these guys show up and he kind of finishes them off one by one. So kind of the crux of the film. Now, if you look at some of the issues I had with the film, one of the things is like Rambo comes up first to the pimp and they don't kill him off right away. They kind of just let him live as an example. And it's kind of like, that's really dumb. Would you really not have killed this guy, because that guy is going to lead to the outside world, but they don't know how dangerous the guy is. So that's, kind of possible, I think. Another thing is Carmen kind of shows him the ropes to get around Mexico, and she helps him figure out where these houses are, but they don't really explain how or why. I mean, it's not necessarily to the film per se, because, you don't need that part to get to the next part, but it would have been kind of nice to show, how she helps crack the case with Rambo, I think. The motivation for the film, I think, is a really solid story. I mean, I wasn't expecting much, it's Rambo, you're just going to shoot a whole bunch of people up, but the fact that they get his adopted daughter and then she dies anyway, it's just like, oh man, the motivation to get revenge is so strong in this film. It's so well done, especially because Rambo is kind of this broken guy. So the contrast is really good. The questions I have with the film is like, this guy's a Vietnam vet, so he would be like, I don't know, dude, if you're in Vietnam in your 20s and that's in the 60s, you'd be 40 plus 20 more, you'd be 60 years on top, you'd be 80 years old. Would that 80-year-old be able to fight back? Now if you're in your 50s, maybe, like I'm 47, I still feel pretty fit. I'd probably have a lot of injuries, but if I was kind of well trained before and I was able to practice my craft again and then get back up there, maybe. But in your 80s, I just think you'd have back problems, all kind of stuff. I mean, they show in the film Rambo kind of riding a horse in circles and stuff, so he's definitely showing that he still has control of animals, which, it's pretty cool. But then on the other end, you're like, dude, don't you remember Christopher Reeve? I think I got paralyzed riding a horse, right? So, and at a younger age. So Sylvester Stallone kind of took a big risk, I think, there. But, it adds a little bit to the Rambo character. My aspect, I think he'd be able to shoot the guns, no problem. The thing is, would he actually be able to kill them with his bare hands? I don't know, maybe they should have shown him still working out maybe more, so he was like physically buff. I think that would have added more to the plot, like a little bit of working out there just to make sure, he's 80, but he stayed in like amazing shape. That would have been a little bit more to the plot. They do show him building all the traps and stuff, which is what you want, but I think because of his age, you kind of have to show him working out so that it's believable that he's able to do this stuff. I still think it wouldn't be unbelievable, but if he showed him working out, it kind of would have added more drama to the film. Another thing that would have been nice is maybe a sheriff shows up somehow, like Rambo contacts a sheriff, he doesn't know what to do, and then the sheriff shows the last hand that kind of helps him finish off the last guys maybe. And the sheriff would say, hey, don't worry about it, and then he'd show up and something, right? So that would have been kind of a nice tie-in, I think, to have him, because in the first film, First Blood, he's, has the whole follow with the sheriff, and that leads to him taking on the whole town, right? And this, you could have had full circle where you had the local sheriff, but Rambo's seen maybe as an ally and not seen as the enemy this time, and kind of had them working as a team. It would have been kind of nice to show Rambo kind of came back together with society and somehow. One thing I think I would have improved, they might not need this, but as far as kind of, they might have had some flashbacks with the girl when she's growing up and, kind of age altered his face so they show a younger Rambo with him with this girl when she goes to junior high graduation, high school graduation, the local prizes she wins at sports. That would have had kind of a tighter bond, so when she dies, it would have been a little more brutal, I think. Add a little more weight to the story. I mean, it has a great story as is, but that would have added more like, I think, the first part of the film should have been probably more about the girl. You probably could have cut back a little bit on the Rambo scenes. I mean, he's Sylvester Stallone's producing this, he's in it, so he puts himself as kind of the character, but I think that part of the story should have probably been much more of the girl and her relationship growing up and all this. They do it pretty well, but I think they could have done a little bit more to it. The acting of Rambo, I think, as far as like the tough guy thing, he covers that well. I think if this girl had been killed, he would have had more emotional reaction. Maybe not because he's Rambo and he's killed hundreds of guys, but it would have been nice to see him kind of break down, kind of maybe crash the car or something, or just yelled, ah, or something at the top of his voice. I think that would have gave a little more panache to it. I mean, I know that's more, young mans have more testosterone, so you're more like, and anger and driven, and you're more mellow when you get older, but if someone dies, you're just not going to react At least in a film, you should react more. So, you know, there could have been a little bit better acting there on Sylvester Stallone's part. You know, he reads as a good action character, but you kind of want to work in that breaking down, and the mother breaking down, I think they did pretty okay, but they could have done a little bit more there. Otherwise, I think it's pretty enjoyable considering I didn't have any expectations, so I thought, you know, it's an entertaining film. If you guys want to subscribe, you can subscribe below. And I'll see you in the next movie review. Thanks for watching, guys.